Why does understanding file permissions in Linux matter? Well, it's all about maintaining control and security in your systems. Let's dive into it. In the world of Linux, file permissions aren't just about limiting who can see your holiday photos. They're a fundamental part of the system's security architecture. By correctly setting these permissions, you can drastically reduce the risk of unauthorized access or data loss in your systems. Now, file permissions in Linux are divided into three main categories: read, write, and execute. These permissions dictate what users can do with a file or directory. First, we have the read permission, often denoted by an R. This allows a user to view the contents of a file. If a user lacks this permission for a file, they'll be unable to read what's inside. Imagine it like having a book, but the pages are glued together. Next comes the write permission, represented by a W. This is the permission that allows a user to modify a file or directory. If a user doesn't have this permission, they can still view the file if they have read access, but they can't make any changes. It's like being able to read a book but not being able to write or erase anything on its pages. Lastly, we have the execute permission, denoted by an X. This permission allows a user to execute a file, meaning they can run the file if it's a script or a program. Without this permission, a user won't be able to run the file, even if they can read or write to it. It's like having a recipe book but not being able to cook any of its recipes. Now, these permissions can be set for three types of users: the owner of the file, the group that the file belongs to, and everyone else. By carefully setting these permissions, you can ensure that only the right people have access to your files. So to summarize, understanding and correctly setting file permissions in Linux is a critical part of maintaining your system's security. By knowing the difference between read, write, and execute permissions, and knowing how to set these permissions for different types of users, you can control who can view, modify, or run your files. And remember, you can also add users, add groups, and modify user permissions. All of these steps contribute to a more secure and efficient Linux environment. Thank you for joining me on this journey into the world of Linux file permissions. Until next time, keep those systems secure.